Hello, people. Welcome to the Free to Be Bored podcast.
Yay!
This podcast was recorded in a backwards way. Me and Louise, we started having a conversation. Then we were like, wait a second, why are we not recording this already? So we started recording mid-conversation to put you up to speed on what happened. Yesterday, we had a recording for our second episode of the podcast, which was a train wreck of beauty and rawness and shame, which we're not quite ready to put out there, but which brought lots and lots of contemplations around shame and around birthing something and around stepping into somehow your journey, your power, your road. And then from there, I don't even remember where we started recording, but then from there you'll jump into a conversation around things that are in our hearts. But it's still a fascinating topic of like what it means to step into your power, right? Like we all want things. And it's always like this question of like, what's on the other side of our wanting? Because it's so easy to come up with a story of like, oh, God's not supporting me, or I'm not good enough, or like life is too hard for me, which I'm not saying there's not like a truth to that for a lot of people, because like, okay, we also can acknowledge that we have a fairly privileged experience.
Yeah.
And still it's like, what's on the other side of our wantings? Like all the ways in which we will have to face ourselves. Because yeah, there's like the joyful, exciting part of like, ooh, there's a podcast out there. We're starting a project. Amazing. And then there's the other backlash of like, oh my God, I'm being seen. I'm out there. I have to show up consistently. Who the fuck am I even to be saying anything about anything? Like all the parts of ourselves that are like so hard to hold and witness and love is like all of a sudden they're going to be like, we're here and we have something to tell you. Do you want to listen? Do you have space for me? And a lot of the times the answer is no. And I mean, and that's also okay. And that's basically what's keeping us on that side, right? Like what's keeping us somehow. I mean, it's not small because also like we all are facing life at our own pace and rhythm. But it is true, like this path of empowerment is not just the cute part of like, oh, I'm Superwoman, I can do this, I'm strong, I'm wonderful. It's like, no, you're fucking vulnerable. And if you choose to step into this, you will have to face yourself in that.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Are we ready? I don't know. I feel like I have like a funky style happening in the I feel like I am and I am not ready, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I want to be ready, and that's the mind, right? That has the plans of like, this is who I want to be, this is who I want to show up as. And then there's the soma, the body, with all its fears and all its like onward stuff and all its unconscious tendencies and beliefs that it's like showing itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm ready, and in some ways I'm not. Like, and I felt that yesterday. I was like, am I ready?
I was not ready. I thought I was more ready than I was in the first place. And I think we both went into the creation part of it with that, like, yes, we're taking something scary because we both have a desire, and we're going to create something that hopefully has a life force of its own, and it's going to impact someone maybe at some point, or it's going to be seen by people, and we're moving into our power, like you said. But we are now living, as we experienced yesterday, we're living what stepping into that meant. And it's made me go, am I ready?
I also don't think that it necessarily means that you or me are not ready.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a part of it that is like clearly we're ready because we're here. The first episode is out. And then it's just like I find it funny because I was the one coming up with the term "I'm ready." I was like, it's not about being ready.
But that's what I mean. Like it's confronting the fact that being ready, it just does this as everything else does. Everything seems to just do this, and it's like being comfortable in this. I feel ready. Oh no, I don't. It's already out there. Now I feel less ready. I'm going for it anyway. It's like back and forth, this like states of readiness, states of our being. In some states, and when we're in our power, we feel super ready. And then in other states, which was the shame or the fear that we've experienced, just did not feel ready for anything, right?
Yeah. And maybe the word then, because it's like, it's true, we're never going to be ready. Like, we never know what life is going to throw at us and where we're going to be in our journey. But like, are we willing? Are we willing to allow the shame? But it's true. And it happened with you yesterday because like at the end of the day, you can say I was not ready, but you were willing. There was also a willingness. And you felt the shame and you moved through many layers of it. And where like the shame is very strong, but maybe this other longing within me is stronger. And I feel it's always like that in life, or at least that's what I like to tell people when I want to give them advice. Like, we're always choosing something, right? Yeah. Always. And in anything we do, and that never means that choice is easy, but it just means that we are choosing to value one thing more than another, and that's okay. Like that's showing us where we want to go, who we want to be, and yeah, in that it's never simple. So sometimes it's like right now we choose to step into this with all the discomfort, with all the pain, with all the shame. And maybe at other points we would have chosen the shame. And that was also okay. Like at other points that would have been stronger. The voice in our heads that is like, who do you think you are? And then we're like, yeah, you're right. Who do I think I am? Abort mission.
And that voice is really strong. I mean, I tried to abort the mission. Had it been a solo project, it would have been aborted. Right? There was actually a like logging on and checking and thinking, oh, it's just cancel schedule. That's fine. Maybe that's safer. That will be, yeah, that'll save us from, and by us, I don't mean me and you. I mean us as in every single part of me that was like, what did you do? Like the part that felt ready, the part that felt willing to take a step and be like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try and have discussions with a friend that I would be having anyway, but like allow other people to see me in those discussions and think whatever they're going to think because I can't control it. So there's a part of me that was like, that's fine. And that part's quite strong in day-to-day life. But when the reality hit of like, it's all been edited, you've looked at yourself over and over again. Ximena's amazing. Why are you so awkward? Let's edit more. At the end of that process, the other parts of me were so much stronger of, you know, this is ridiculous, right? You know, this is, you like, it's so true because it's all these shamed parts. They're loud and there are many. They're different ages, they've had different experiences, and they're all there in this like choir of abort. Exactly what you said, like just it's so much safer to stay here and unknown. And the thing is, you've got the other side of that, the inner critic going, I don't know why you're worried anyway. Nobody's gonna fucking watch it. No one's gonna care. It was a lot in the system. It really was a lot in the system. But we sat here, and although I was going through that live, you held space for me and helped me sit here with it and acknowledge it. And then willingness is exactly the right word, because willingness just pushed us on to experience trying to do episode 2, which completely exists in a complete shame process, live, unadulterated, cringy, probably process, and it'll serve us. And hopefully it'll serve whoever listens to this episode 3 in understanding that we went through something major in the creation and then the release of this actual podcast itself. And the helpful thing for us, I think, there as well is it's on topic, which is iconic.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things, but then it's like when shame comes, it wants to burn the entire house, right?
Exactly.
Like when shame is there, it will pick up upon the smallest thing, even the thing that you don't give a fuck about, right? Like I have, let's say, no issues with my hair. Well, shame is here. Let me find something to say about your hair. It's like anything, it will destroy anything on its way.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how it works in my head. Maybe I have like more of a tyrannical head than other people, but I think we're all in it together.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's actually quite mean. It like pushes your positive points into the shadow. It's very strong. It like, as you said, it brings the parts of you that you're proud of or that you have no issue with whatsoever into an extreme issue that you should be completely ashamed about, because at some point in your life you experienced shame about something in that topic, but there wasn't anyone there to like witness you and say that it was okay and that it wasn't anything to be ashamed of, you know, whether that was an inner critic, whether it was a teacher or a parent, or even just what the generalized idea in school was of what was okay and what wasn't okay to show up, you know.
No, and I think even for me, like what I recognize is like the shame process even comes more around the parts of myself that maybe I'm proud of. Like this voice again of like, whatever do you think you are to put this out there? And of course it comes like from the part of me that maybe at one point felt confident enough. It's like, oh, maybe I have something to say. And maybe people could be interested in what I have to say. Maybe I have been alive and this can be like useful for others to hear and reflect upon. And it's just like, it really goes for that. Like it really wants to destroy that. And it's like, again, it was coming up to me like that. Like, what do you think you even have to say, Ximena? Like, where does this idea that anyone would be interested in your wisdom is coming from? It's like, you stay small. Like, you have no place to like think that you can be great. And even like as I say that out loud, as I say like, oh, I'm just like openly associating the idea of greatness with the idea of myself, I get like disgust. It's like, no, you stop yourself right there. Like you are a wordless human being and you better remember that, right? It's like it gets as extreme as that. I'm not like making up a dramatic story. It's like it's like how the tyrant all of a sudden, like again, like I'll destroy anything in my pace, on my way. And it's like even the parts that we are like insecure about, those parts don't even hurt as much because those parts we've already been shaming ourselves from, like however many years we've been alive or we've been carrying this shame, right? So it's like, oh yeah, that part is like, I have to look at myself in the mirror. For instance, like as we're recording this, I have the mirror right behind me. And sometimes I would look in the mirror and it's like, oh my God, your face is starting to get so wrinkly and blah, blah, blah. And then like all the judgments about like how I look start coming in. And then like sometimes maybe those are like a little bit heavier because they're more new. So it's just like, it's a thing that wasn't there. But some of other things about other stuff that I've been judging myself my entire life is like, oh yeah, we know that. And
Yeah.
and it's so crazy again, like we know that you're unlovable that way. We know that you're fucked up in that specific form. But
Yeah.
it's like somehow even more more acceptance, which is a very violent acceptance, but
It
it's
becomes the norm. It's like those horrific stories, we're hardened to those. Those wounds are old. So there's like, they've scabbed over. We hear those over and over again. The ones with appearance, the ones with, you know, it depends where your wounds are. But like for me, before I had old wounds about in the corporate space and really struggled to like hold big sessions or, you know, have an audience more than 4 on Zoom. And the same stories as you're saying just now were playing out to me. But over time, the stories kind of stayed there because I wasn't looking at the actual shame and moving into it and feeling it the way that we've moved into trying to do now. It just became a story that I got used to and I could almost mask against. And it just became background noise, which is like violent background noise, right? Exactly as you've just been saying. And it's the newer stories, the moving into, I might be seen publicly now with this thing. And who am I to think that I might be good at that, or I might be good at having conversations or bringing people on or invoking some meaningful discussion around being human or being alive or being terrified, any of these bits. And it was so much rawer, it was so much more terrifying, the new story, even though like if you compare with the older stories, they're just as bad. Like the parts are being just as mean and just as like they're deliberately trying to scare you into inaction, right? Because if I think about how I froze yesterday, like the physical somatic side effect of the shame flooded my system, it wasn't just the thoughts and the parts that I could hear of like, you should stop, let's stop now before it gets too far. It was the freeze of the body, the mind blank, you know, the let's shut this down, it would be better if everything just went away. And then even the after effects of it in my system of like physically wanting to be like this in a protective state, and like all of that from an inner critic that was created through a shame process because I'm stepping out of a comfort zone into something new. And it's really powerful. I think it's a really powerful thing to look at and be able to examine. And then also in that, try not to be afraid of it. Try not to shame the shame because it has its purpose, because it's so powerful. Because what we experienced yesterday, and we'll go into what we actually experienced yesterday, has such a potency in it. It was just very extreme as we both experienced it together and witnessed one another experiencing it. As we tried to do something so lovely and so exciting that we'd really enjoyed doing the same time the week before. And we experienced a completely different scenario that was so bogged down with emotion, so bogged down with an actual process, that we're on episode 3. And we're going to use what happened to episode 2 to talk about in episode 3.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if you've ever heard this quote. I mean, again, many things were coming, but there's this quote by Marianne Williamson that's it, and I can look it up later, but it says something like, our greatest fear or our deepest fear is not our darkness, but our light. Mm-hmm. And it's so counterintuitive, and still it's so true. It's just like this fear to really embrace our greatness, and like, but really, and to truly believe it. Again, not to create a story about like, oh, I'm Ximena and I'm so great and I make no mistakes. Just say like, yeah, there's like, and again, you can enter into any cosmogony or cosmology or whatever that you follow, right? But let's say for me, I love the word God, and it's just like, okay, we're all an expression of God. Like we are all like, we're all God. So it's really about embracing that and saying like, there is a reason for me to be here. Like, I am not a mistake. I am not like this unlovable being, that I deem myself to be separate from everything else. It's like literally, it's just like I'm God, not in an egoic way, right? And it's just believing that, it's even scarier than believing all the horrible things we have thought about ourselves, or believing again, like, okay, this is the way in which God shines through me in this human form. Like, these are my gifts. This is the beauty that I bring into the world. Which is very interesting because it's so easy to see it in other people, right? You said, like, as you were recording the episode, all of a sudden there's like this mind that is like, oh yeah, Ximena is great. I'm a piece of shit.
I thought, you're a piece of shit and she's a shining star. Give her the podcast, let her have a solo podcast.
Exactly, right? So it's just like, Ximena is allowed to shine. I am not. Same for me, right? It's just like, oh my God, looking at the videos, and like, clearly I can't help it, but it's just like, oh my God, the hand gestures, what is happening? It's like, am I Italian? Like, it doesn't stop. It's like something to criticize, but always like something to keep myself small. Everyone else in the world has permission to shine, has permission to be an expression of God. Actually, everyone else in the world is an expression of God, but somehow, mysteriously, I'm the only one that is not. Like, I'm the one that God forgot, the one that he left behind, which is like the most ridiculous thought, because actually on the other side of it, what it shows is like so much self-centeredness, and it's actually hilarious, right? We think like, oh, I'm suffering because I'm different and everyone else is great and I'm not. And it's like, well, the fact that you're even thinking that is just like you like separating yourself from the rest and giving yourself like a special quality, even though it's a bad special quality, but it's still like, I'll be special no matter what it takes.
Being the worst.
Yeah. Yes, like, if I need to be special at being the worst, I'll take it. All in the name of specialness. But yeah, it's just back to this thing that yeah, for me it really blows my mind. Like, how much more the shame is trying to contain the light than it is trying to contain the darkness.
Oh yeah.
Like, way easier. Like, it's much easier to come into a space and say like, oh, I'm a shitty this, or oh, I have failed at this. And sometimes come and be like, oh, like, but from the heart, even from humbleness and from truth, be like, I am doing this and I feel so proud in myself and I feel so much joy in what I'm bringing forth into the world. Like, again, I start saying those words and it's like something starts like, no, disappear. Yeah. Like, do not say those things out loud. It's really crazy.
It is. And you touched on that exactly. It's like you said, the permission. It's like we're actually seeking permission. And it brings it back to like shame being, it serves so many things, but it serves us to live in society, right? That's kind of its purpose. It's like they said on a call I was on once that like it's shame that stops you getting naked in class. I was on a call and I was like, yeah. So that's its purpose. But it's when it's, you know, what am I trying to say here? When you're shamed for things that are your light, that are like suitable for society, having a sense of self-worth, or thinking that you have a nice singing voice, or enjoying things that bring you joy. It's your younger experiences, well, certainly mine, younger experiences where someone felt that was wrong and that shame came in, and then you attach to that shame and then you no longer have permission to go there. Permission was denied. And that's where it doesn't serve society, and that's where it's starting to create this, like, I don't know what it would be called, like a endemic of shame, because as you move into like the healing space and the spiritual space, and you start to understand how people do inner work, you know, how you can approach it yourself, there's layers of shame, and you touched on this earlier, that like there's layers of shame prohibiting us from accessing not only parts of ourselves, but literal emotions that we need to feel and witness and heal from, so that we can handle those emotions in day-to-day life. So it's almost like this like glue that's stuck in all these different places within our systems, but also within society. And it's it's just such a fascinating emotion. I think for me, it's a theme for me, and it's a big topic for me anyway. I didn't expect us to be talking as deeply about it as we are in this episode, or we will in this podcast, but clearly it wants to be discussed. We've experienced it, we've lived through that version of experiencing shame. But it is, but like I said, it was back to permission. And yesterday, because we were in a space that was safe for both of us, we had permission to really go into the shame and not pull that part of us that normally allows us to push through it and just ignore it and shove it down. You know, something to be dealt with later. That part can hold a little bit more of that shame that I'm swallowing and moving past. Let's just trundle forward and create something with this discomfort in our systems. And it's funny because you'd think that it would be more of a relief to sit in it and experience it and witness it. But it was almost just as uncomfortable. But I think it was healthier for us because we had a safe place and we had permission to say, I'm experiencing a shitload of shame in my system really, really intensely, and it's physical and having a mental effect on me. And you were able to say the same back. And we don't have permission in day-to-day life to go into that. So it is an unusual scenario, but it's a perfect experiment to have a discussion about right here. You know?
Yeah. I don't know, like, as I was hearing you speak, like what was coming up a lot was just like somehow a sadness, especially for the children of the world, of like that birthing process of shame. That I think it's like to a big degree happens through our schooling system.
Yeah.
It's just that because, you know, shame is also just coming from this normative, I don't know if need or agenda, let's call it. We all have to be the same, right? We all have to shine in the same places. We all have to like the same things. And everything that is outside of that, shame on you. And for instance, I carry shame in my system. I mean, I'm sure as a child, it's just not so much in my awareness, but like for like a year, I worked as a school teacher. And there's just so much shame within me of how I was not able to meet all the different children in their needs. And that maybe I created like a certain scar, but by not knowing how to acknowledge their specific life, just because like of the heaviness of the school agenda, right? Like you have to deliver grades, you have to deliver discipline, you have like all of these things can happen. And anyone that's coming up with a way of being that it's not fitting in is like, you just have to like turn them off or like dim their specific light, because otherwise you cannot control. You have no control, then you will not perform in the way that is being asked of you. It's just like thinking, for instance, of children that they were just not made for the school system, because again, the school system works well maybe for a 10% of the children that have like a very more structured mind, like more calm, like more of an academic disposition, and that's beautiful for them. But then there's this whole other part of us that is just like trying to adjust to this, because also we are being graded. Like imagine like how insane, like we grow up with being given grades about who we are, about our performance. Like, let me know if that's not just the perfect breeding environment for a life full of shame. Like all the time you have to be coming up to an imposed standard from the outside that is like valuing certain things on top of other things. And it's painful. Like I feel so much sadness to again think of all the way we are like dimming other beings' lives just in the name of this standardized reality. And then how we continue to carry that with us for however many years until we're like, no more.
Mm-hmm. And how much it takes. You know, you were like sadness. It's masses and masses of sadness. Sadness for what's each of us have lost in our embedded shame because of being too loud one time or not understanding the rules of something and then never taking part again because you were shamed or whatever that looks like. But the volume of that, the volume of lost opportunity or the volume of lost joy or people sharing their gifts with the world, having conversations, putting themselves out there. We can't control anything, but it would be really nice if the shame could be attached only to, you know, the inner critic. Like we were ashamed to criticize ourselves. You know, it would, if it could work the other way. It would be beautiful. If it could work the other way. But you're right, it doesn't need to work the other way if it could serve in the way that it's essentially been designed to serve. Is there's a safety for the tribal, societal, let's all, you know, do something that makes us feel guilty, feel the guilt, and then feel a bit of shame about that. Go to someone and share that guilt, share that shame, be witnessed in that, accept it in ourselves, have someone else accept it and see us in it. Integrate that dark part of us or whatever, that shadow part of us that created that. That's shame serving its purpose, right?
Mm.
But the way that it's through the school system, through cliques and different belief systems and extremes of one and the other, and as we try and navigate around as children, and you want to be part of, you want to be normal, you want to be in this like majority because it's safe. So you want to cut parts of yourself off. And you either do that yourself by self-shaming so that you can, you know, pass the tests. Why can't I pass the test the same as everyone else? Or why can't I do this sport the same way everyone else can? So you're getting it externally, you're having it internally. It's not serving the purpose that it was essentially designed to serve. Because it's so attached to, like, as you say, it's like light. It's so intertwined with creativity. It's like the springboard for it. It's like, can you push past the shame, even though it's in your system, enough to just go there and be seen and like allow that to have its own healing effect on the shame in your system? Some people can certainly do that, right? Some people, I think it's incredible. There's no way that there are shame-free people. People aren't aware that they've got lots of shame in their systems, for sure. But like those that can push right through it, and then, you know, I thought that was me. I thought finally I'm in a place where I'm gonna go for something here. I'm gonna do something that I've been interested in doing for a long time. Let's see. And then crumble, crumble, crumble in its own way, in a fast way for me. Here was this thing I needed to face. And it was like payment for it, in a way. It was like, you can probably have this, but here's a bunch of stuff that you must face. And it takes courage, I think, to try and face it. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to do that myself. I was able to do that with you. But I can't stop thinking about the fact that it could have been a loss. And it takes it back to that like sadness of, this may not be a top 3% podcast, so that doesn't actually matter. Like that, it didn't matter to us when we wanted to create this. It came from a place of joy. And then the shame almost took some of that joy, took the whole joy, potentially. It certainly took some of it. We had experience yesterday together that I'm so pleased that we had. It wasn't joyful. It was difficult. It was difficult. And, you know, as we said in the first episode, I'm in Scotland, you're in Mexico. We've never met. And we experienced each other in states yesterday that you wouldn't normally expose yourself, because it's shameful to show yourself in this like freeze, broken, embarrassed, awkward way. But we did that. So I'm taking joy, and I'm taking some of that sadness back, just to try and see the gift in it. And we said that last night, like hindsight will probably be really beautiful and seeing the threads of gold that are in both the episode and what we experienced, but it wasn't easy to see yesterday.
No, it wasn't. I think many things.
She thinks many things.
It's just like the inner rebel is coming through. I don't know, because it also makes me mad and it makes me sad, because at the end of the day, it's just like this very same people that end up in a classroom or in whichever space, like using shame as a control strategy, because that's basically what it is. Like you said, shame is going to eventually put your system into a freeze state, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how's the easiest way to control someone into submission? Shame them. Shame them into believing or into disbelieving their light, into thinking there's something wrong with their life. And then you have just so, but again, it's like these very same people that used shame upon us. It's like a knowing and an unknowing. Like they did it because that's also how people did it to themselves. Mm-hmm. Very few people, I think, in this world, I'm sure they exist, but very few people will come with that ill intent to really like shame someone else, to really hurt them. Mm-hmm. It's just like also it has become almost instinctual in the way our culture works. And it's very interesting, because I think usually when we try to shame someone else, I mean, I'm bringing it to this part of shaming others. I know we're more speaking about experiencing shaming ourselves, but just like this note of, usually when we need to shame someone else, what it's showing us, it's our lack of capacity to experience the way that they are showing themselves in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's never about the other one. It's always about ourselves. It's just like, I don't have capacity to be with how loud this person is, or how expressive they are, or how like out of the box their creativity is. Mm-hmm. So how do I, instead of like looking at myself and looking at how do I hold myself through what is coming through, it's like, again, how do I control on the outside? Which is very much of how we work in the world. And then the other thing that was coming through, and I think they say it like that, the shame experts, is that actually what's on the other side of shame is curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. Not even necessarily the push through, but it's just like we become curious about what is there. Like we become curious about who we are, about what we want to bring into the world, about what it feels to experience these heavy, paralyzing emotions. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very beautiful, because when I think about curiosity, I feel it's kind of the trademark of the inner child. It's a trademark of a child. So maybe in shame there is the gift of like bringing ourselves back to this childlike curiosity, and I guess like how beautiful is that, right? Like to truly be curious about our lives, to be curious about the world, to be curious about our own impulses, about our own fears, about our own desires. Like that's, it sounds, I haven't done it fully yet, but it sounds like such a place of freedom, right?
Yeah. It sounds like a place of complete self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. Like it's a gateway back, almost, through the shame. It's the gateway back to that state of being before the conditioning that created the shame in the first place. I do think that it probably is a large part of why doing inner work or being curious about the self, about what's inside, about, well, how do I show up really? Like, if you've got a lot of shame in your system, asking yourself those questions is just another shame cycle. It's
True.
It's uncomfortable. So it's not the hallmark, but it's, as I said before, it's like embedded in all of the traumas in your system. It's embedded in all of the negative interactions that caused you to react in a certain way in your system. There can be shame about having shame. There can be shame about all of these different things, whether the institution or establishment created that in our systems, whether it was religion or the family, whatever it was. There's another layer that we create upon ourselves, and it's like breaking through that barrier, being curious enough to break through that barrier for people to look inside and, you know, start the work, start the wading through experiences and wading through what things really feel like, and getting back to closer and closer to that inner child, closer and closer to the creative genius that the inner child has always had, but is just underneath all of these layers that are ingrained with shame. You know, and I think you just said that. I think it's like this gateway. It's like a gateway emotion, because if we go back to just how we both just experienced this, because we were curious enough to look it in the face, and we're going to share about it. We're sharing about it right now. It's getting to live. It's a loud space. It's being looked at. We're curious about it as well. Is on the other side of that, more self-acceptance for ourselves, because not only are we putting out another episode right now, it's 10 times more vulnerable than we first anticipated any of this being. And it's, if anything, has potential to bring even more shame processing forward, right? Really. The first one, it was fun. We jumped into stuff. We spoke a lot of vagueness. We were free to be vague, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're like, what? Free to be in shame.
And also free to be unshamed.
Exactly. So this is a live unshaming process.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, it sounds like I look at life very positively. It's not necessarily that, but it's like all of a sudden it even gets exciting, because it's like, wow, like also like through shame, we are giving the possibility to come back to honor our unique journey. Mm-hmm. It's like again, it's somehow shame is telling us that there's been this imposed reality of like from the outside of what it means to be alive. And that imposed reality from the outside becomes internalized too. It's like as we allow ourselves to dialogue and to open up to the shame with curiosity, actually what is laying or however on the other side is like the uniqueness of our own path and how beautiful that can be. And again, it's just like it's so much freedom there, because when we're living in this fallacy, is that a word in English?
Yeah.
Like in this lie of the unique path, right? Of like, this is what your life is supposed to look like. These are the things that are of value. These are the things that are wrong. This is like, it's just like creating a narrow box in which there's no space for anything. It's suffocating. There's so much suffering there. And like all of a sudden, when we open up to the diversity of possibilities, of lives, of expressions. It's just like, oh, I'm okay just the way that I am. It's like, I'm okay. And I may not have had this A, B, C, and D experience that the standardized version of reality has told me that I had. And I may not be creating a podcast that is going to be on the top 3% and people are going to say like Louise and Ximena, even though, again, part of this is leaving open the possibility that it might, right? Because it's easier sometimes for the head to accept the staying small than the becoming up big. And like, again, everything is possible, which I think it's so much more, well, not so much more, but it's also like what spirituality is teaching us in so many ways, not just in a like free flowy kind of way of like, oh yeah, do whatever you want, but like this reality is infinite possibilities, infinite ways to be, infinite ways to grow, infinite ways to understand. Are we willing to go there? Are we willing to start relating to life from that lens instead of just like still carrying this weight of all the things we were fed that we should be, that we should want, that we should achieve, that we should.
Mm-hmm. We are willing.
We are willing. And again, and every time we are facing shame, it can be a gateway. It can be a way in which life is opening us up to see, to remember the infinite possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that. And it's the light behind the shame. It's the light behind what it blocks out, you know, and it's in itself. And it's rarely on its own. It's rarely just shame. There's normally like fear and some other emotions there, depending on where it's rooted. And it's, you know, it's a gateway to feel those emotions as well, which might be quite scary. If you do something that unshames you and you have an opportunity to look at the shame in the face and accept it and really feel into it, that may come with some fear, it might come with some guilt. Those are also being felt, those are also being witnessed, they're also being accepted and integrated into our system and creating a space where we can move forward a little tiny bit stronger, because next time we feel those emotions, we'll be like, I'm alive. We survived that experience. And at the end of it was a little bit more light, a little bit more like, we've got this. This was okay, because it can be to the point of freeze, can feel like it's life or death, because things become so, I mean, the thinking is just so irrational in that space, right? It's completely irrational. It's black or white, life or death. There's only two options. There's nothing in between. There's no other feelings in between either to even bring in to try and cope with the overload in your system of this overpowering emotional trio even sometimes. But the power of moving through them, and you see in that on the other end, and the pride in yourself for being like, that was a lot, but I didn't actually die. You know, my system and my network, you know, you were here to watch mine, I was here to watch yours, or my circumstances now are such that I can actually feel these things. Maybe I want to go in a bit deeper. Maybe I want to investigate where this lies. Like, how deep does this go? How much of this can I face? And how much more light does that then allow into my body? Does that now allow into my life? Does that allow to come out of me in creativity and in whatever innate genius I was brought into this earth with? And it's an unshaming, unmasking, and it's moving into your authentic self. And it goes right back to what you said at the start. Like, that's the hardest thing one of the hardest things for humans to be in, which is such a strange thought when you think about the human race on this planet and the capacity we have in ourselves, each of us has in ourselves, to like connect in this compassionate, beautiful, joyous way, a simple, really simple way. But that's not what we're experiencing at the moment.
Mm.
And therefore it's like we go from one stage in life all the way to a realization age, which is changing a lot nowadays. It's like shifting all over the place to go back the way. But through that, it's like we need to go through this suffering of the conditions and of the traumas and of these belief systems that we've picked up along the way, just to go back to this like light and this genius kind of thing. And maybe that's the point, because there's no handbook. Maybe that is the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's the beautiful point. And if that is the point, then we're definitely experiencing a lot of it right now.
We're winning.
Are we winning? Are we winning? Maybe we're winning. Exactly.
I mean, we're winning just because we're here, right? And we're listening to our willingness more than we are to our shame. We know that the shame is not gone. We know that it'll make appearances throughout this journey and any journey that we go through. And still, it's like, to the best of our ability, we are willing. And I'm sure you will go through another process as you have to edit this episode. And I'm sure new layers of the shame will come.
Yes.
And I'm sure also for my own process, new layers will come. Only you, not me. But it literally started right after we finished the first recording. Like there was just something in me, you know? And I think it was like this part of, and again, it feels cocky to say it, but we might be stepping into something amazing. We might be creating like something important, at least for the both of us. And that's a lot. Because it's also like this part, and I don't even know if this part was recorded already or not, but of what happens when your prayers are answered and how they're like, how ready, how willing you are to be with everything that the answering of your prayers come with. Because of course, whenever we project something into the future, we have a longing or a desire, we just tend to see the tip of the iceberg, right? And then there's 10,000 other things that are going to open up as you step into the space, and all of a sudden recognizing that. And it was kind of this realization of somehow we are always exactly not only exactly where we need to be, but where we want to be. You know, there's so much of this human consciousness that we're always striving for something else. It's just like, oh, I wish I was somewhere else. I wish my life was different. I wish this was another way. And then there's the other part that is like, well, maybe it wasn't because I don't have the capacity yet to be with everything that would entail, to be with everything that means. And like that was like, as I was contemplating on that yesterday, that did bring fear. And I did ask myself that question. Okay, like if all of a sudden this thing were to really pick up, it's like, and it's just not this fun thing that we do like once a week and like have a conversation about it. Like, can I deal with it? Can I really do? Can I really answer back the answer to my prayer? And I was just like, I don't know. I'll try, but I don't know. And that part was surprising. A little bit, it was humbling for sure,
Mm-hmm.
It was also like a little bit saddening of like also facing the possibility, saying maybe I don't have capacity, and maybe, but that's just the dramatic mind, you know, like maybe I don't get to grow. But no, just
Yeah, I
saying,
should have listened to all those naysaying thoughts in my head.
maybe they're right. Maybe the tyrant is right, which is also true. Like the tyrant is not only a tyrant, it's like this voice is also trying to protect us from something that it doesn't quite fully understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that was the most surprising part of just like this feeling of like, oh, something has been set in motion. Like there was definitely a feeling of like we're stepping into something wherever it goes. Like we have stepped into something important.
Mm-hmm.
And then can I handle everything that might open up from that, from stepping into that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about you?
Everything you said, 100%. It was the excitement of, yeah, this is going to be fun, and our conversations are always so fun, and like get to learn new skills. So like software, and like we don't know, I have to learn it, you know, like get to eat all of this learning in this short period of time to make it work, and like that was all so exciting. But it blinded me to the fact that when you have a desire for something, it's like the statement of what am I going to do in return for this? You know, it's like I bypassed that part of like, what will this tax me on with time, with facing my shame, which has been the first payment, right? With capacity to just have these discussions and work with what's going on in my world and honor myself at the same time as having a part in this thing, is like stepping up with some consistency. And, you know, will it develop? As it develops, will we go from no budget to low budget to some budget to like whatever that means? I had missed that bit, and you touched on it perfectly. Like there wasn't a full consideration for the transaction of committing to something like this, and what that, like what my promise would be back, and what areas of my life it would take from me. Because initially I'm like, it's going to take time. I have it, love it. It's going to take good relationship and communication. Got it. Tick. It's going to take me on a journey through the gates of shame hell. Don't know if I would have signed up. Like, so yeah, it's like that. But I'm glad it worked out that way, because you've just touched on another thing. Is like it was timed exactly as we needed it to be. It came into fruition at a time that is serving more than just the creation of a podcast, right? What we experienced is definitely not unique. I wanted this version of myself that I'm proud of to be seen. And I didn't want any parts of myself that I'm not proud of to shine through. And that's where it is, really. That's where the point of this, I think, is really going. Is like, if I want to be unshamed and come into this space authentic, maybe I need to start with the hard bits. They're the bits that I'm being brave enough to look at the moment. So it makes sense in this time that's where it leads with, is like this, just have it all. This is how this podcast started, with literal somatic experiences to emotions that were created in both of our systems as we tried to birth this thing. And there's just as enough space for that as there is for the like the naive me that jumped into it. That was like, yay, this is so good, and clapping at the end and all of those good bits, because that is still authentic me. That's still who I am. Like,
and we need her.
Yes, we need her. She's the cheerleader. She's like, yes, let's go. And then everyone else is like, oh fuck, here we go. But for once, it's not ignoring the cheerleader. Like, the cheerleader has been listened to, but it's just that the story is just not as I'd imagined. The story is much more realistic and much more light and dark and much more confronting, and is a bit more of a thriller than a comedy. Although there's funny bits, there's plenty of funny bits, but it's not a comedy. Like, this is real. And yeah, from that, again, I feel quite joyous now. I feel quite pleased to have spread this unbeautiful sort of discussion this early on in whatever this dialogue turns into, you know?
And I think also, like, as you say this, it's recognizing that we are multidimensional beings creating something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And multifaceted beings creating something. So there's some days that the cheerleader is gonna be full power. Wow, embrace her. We need her.
Mm-hmm.
Some days the cheerleader is gonna be like, I'm on a break. You're Unshamed. And then how do we work with this? But that's also life. That's also like showing up to life. Like these little things. It's like they just become like a lab for the experience outside of there. We get to experience ourselves with our thoughts, with our feelings in the context of this conversation, right? And there are certain things that may heighten certain emotions, certain things, as we know that we are being recorded, as we like come up with certain expectations around what this should be, who we should be, but in reality it's life. And then we come here and there's no script, right?
Yeah.
And all the different parts of ourselves start taking turns. Like the wise one, the rebellious one, the gloomy one, the cheerleading one, the shameful one. And it's like, well,
Here
we are, like trying our best. Yeah, just trying. Trying's good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We mentioned like perfectionism, I think, on the last one, or maybe last time we spoke. It's always there, but it's the like accept. It's like like you said, it was humbling, your experience of realizing everything else that it meant. But it's like humbling to just like accept this as it is and move into co-creating this thing that is not like highly produced, that is not scripted, that isn't flashy and, you know, on theme or like on specific topic or following an algorithm or painting this picture of us as experts in a space that I'm relatively new to. I am a human and I've been alive and I'm terrified. But it's like that part of me is really where this shame started from. That perfectionist, that like, this needs to look a certain way, this needs to be a certain way. I've completely lost what I was going to say now. We'll just cut that bit.
I mean, I just had a moment of realizing also how fragile, like this very fragile part of myself that is thinking, if I make any mistake, if I don't show up always consistently and perfectly, I'm gonna lose love. And like the fragility is like how fragile I still believe love to be. Because I was like thinking about something that I wanted to say, and then I remembered about that little part where I was speaking about God. And I was just like, oh, that was not an eloquent way at all to speak about God. That was shitty. That was embarrassing. Like, she should cut that off. And like, if people hear that, they're gonna be like, she doesn't know what she's talking about, and I'm gonna lose respect. And then she's like, wow, how fragile it feels to be in the eyes of other people. Because I know at least the people that are the ones that have been watching so far that love me, they're not gonna stop loving me because I said something stupid for a minute on a podcast.
No.
They'll be like, they will probably not even judge it with the same intensity as I am. It's just like this fear always in the back of the head of like, if I take a wrong step, love is gonna be withheld. Like, love is gonna go away. You better make no wrong move. Yeah, there was this realization coming around this idea of perfectionism, and all of a sudden again the fear of not only the unfiltered parts of ourselves to be out there, but the ones that we don't deem lovable to be out there, or again wise enough or eloquent enough or whatever.
Yeah.
And just giving people the freedom to love us or not love us in whichever way they are capable of. Like,
yeah, it's that extreme view of someone will see this, judge this, and then I will have love removed. It will no longer exist. It will remove the love that is already there. You know, it even goes to the level of like, I have struggled with this, and this is like an open struggle that I have, and I'm willing to discuss that and talk about it. But because I've struggled with this specific showing of myself as my true self, not as like career me or like sister me or daughter me or best friend, as just me having a conversation, it deletes the other skill sets and the other qualities and the other like gifts that I have. Like, if someone sees this version of me, they're going to think, you can't do your job. You're useless. Like, I would never have a session from you, or I would never move into one of your mentoring or coaching programs. Or like, if you were in HR and my, you know, is it like, or do you show too much? Are people ready to see? Because I guess it's back to like what we've learned in judgment in society, and we've learned in judgment of others, is it's safer to show only the bits that they have the capacity to see, because we know that their systems close down or shame or shut out the bits that they don't have capacity to see. So we're on here on a platform showing the bits that genuinely a lot of the public will be like, oh, I wish I didn't know that about them. They want to see this perfect person. This is projection. But a lot of people, I'm the same, like, although now I'm like, I would love to see lots of people just like drop in, be like, oh, just had the worst. I feel so embarrassed, or I feel so ashamed. I just had this like, I don't know, let's say investor meeting, and I just talked drivel and I froze, and like a bit more of that vulnerability and a bit more of that like lived human experience. But yeah, it brings up all of those bits. Like, those bits will be deleted because other people can't hold me in them, and therefore it's like the experience of first impression. First impression counts, because psychologically it counts for the other person, and you lose the ability to like clamber back in second impression and other impression after that. And it's like, if someone is viewing you through their bias of what they expect from you, which in all your capacities is various things, then they see something like this and they think, Jesus, you know,
jeez Louise.
Jeez Louise. Who is she? I thought she was like super composed, or I thought that she was like super confident and like, it's all been a lie. But it's all been a lie. No, but you know what I mean? It's like,
no,
it goes back to that extreme thing, which fueled most of the feeling that happened after posting. It fueled it because of experience of knowing that people want to see a certain you in a certain shape, or at least feeling that people want to see you in a certain shape, and you bending yourself into that shape because you can, because you're willing to. Like, there's no shape here, and it's shifting, and we're going to be different all the time, and it's just like a little fisheye lens into each of our lives and minds, and it's super exposing. It's not like we're sitting on here as experts on a panel trying to provide educational content. You know, it's structureless, it's borderless, it's like it's fluid, and weirdly in our most natural state is the scariest thing.
Yeah. I mean, it, like, at the end, everything you share, it feels like it brings us back to that willingness.
Yeah.
We're willing to show ourselves just as we are in this moment, because it's true. We have other suits that we put on at other moments when they're needed. And also the willingness to not let the reflection that comes back taint the joy that we already have in what's happening, which sometimes it's the scariest part. Like, there might be, as in general, like in life, right? This is just a lesson in life. Like, people will perceive us in whichever way they have capacity to perceive us. But are we gonna stand like in our own truth to be like, okay, this is your perception and it is welcome, but it is not changing the way that I feel about myself? If someone were to say like, oh, that was shitty, but like, you make no sense. And then we were like, no, actually we feel like we made sense. And it's not about not taking like critique or comments, but also not letting everyone else's views and beliefs around each of us, again, in general, as human beings, to always be like creating freeze within our systems and thinking like, oh, that means that I need to change this, or that I wasn't good enough after all, or that this is not a good part of myself. It's just like, we're willing to hold ourselves through the discomfort that may also come from the outer gaze, from the outer gaze. And there will be people that are ready to see us and hear us, and there will be people that are not. That's life. Like, it's also insane how none of us are ever seeing the same thing, right? We're just thinking, we love so much this idea of an objective reality. It's just like everyone's going on their own tangent about whatever as they're listening. It's just like they're just cutting, like they're doing their own editing as something is happening. It's just like, oh, this part. That's like they missed like a whole part because we're lost in our own thoughts, and then that other part, and then put them together, create a whole new meaning, then challenge you around that. And it's like, but actually, in the words that you said, I said, it's not related, but like it's so interesting, like also this act of receiving and processing information that we go through. And again, I'm going on another tangent, but just it's like to bring it back to the fact that it's about us standing grounded in our own knowing of what it is that we want to offer, of how it is that we are able to show ourselves, and just like with knowing we're not perfect, knowing not everyone's gonna like it, knowing that it will probably also hurt us at times. That it will be hard to receive that if it comes. And that we are willing not to just also fully take on another person's belief set just because they are brave enough to voice it, or shameless enough to voice it,
Yeah, it does. It's like the editing thing. You just mentioned the editing thing. Like, when someone edits what they take in reality, there's no there's limited or no thought process into what the other person experienced when they created such thing. I certainly don't think that I go as deep as that when you're just having like your day-to-day thoughts and you're taking things in and you're, as you say, hearing your biased version of what that person stated, or you're looking for something that confirms what you thought about that person already. All these subconscious things. And it's just so wild that knowing that, and knowing how everybody has their completely own version of reality and what's going on at any given moment, even though you could be sitting looking at exactly the same thing, listening to exactly the same thing, no one has taken it in the same, just as you said. To still have the extreme responses that we have as humans to the thought of what other people are how other people are going to take what we've created, whether it's a piece of art, whether it's, I don't know, a piece of music, whatever it is that's been created from willingness and just a joy of creation. I think what I'm trying to say here is, like, at what point does that creation for the point of creation come into our systems? Like, how much shame will we need to be faced in the light of this creation itself for us to, or anyone in the same situation, anyone, how much needs to be faced? And it's going to be individual to each person, but like, where's the threshold? Where is that gateway? Like, at what point? Because I know it's coming. There's a point at which that doesn't happen anymore. There's a point at which the body and the mind go, we know this now. This is being created to be a creation. This is being created because it's got its own place in the world now. It's not being created to please someone in Mexico who listens because they're your friend, or someone in Scotland who listens because they're my friend, but no one in Scotland knows it's happening, so no one's listening.
Not yet.
Not yet, exactly. And it's like, I look forward to that. I really look forward to that state of being that's going to be new to me or old to me, because there's a child in there that got up on stage and was part of a play and had all of these, like, didn't inhibit themselves. So there has to be an adult state of getting back to that place of comfort where creations of all kinds are being looked at, picked apart, judged, whatever, by other people's eyes and senses. And like, I look forward to that. That is the journey. That's where this is going. And again, I feel more excitement and a bit more joy than I did, just even through the catharsis of having this conversation.
It's like you look forward to regaining the courage to just make people watch through a whole like interpretative dance that you created, like just because for the joy of it. Just like whenever kids would get together with their cousins and they just create like a whole choreography, and then they make the entire family see it, and there's no shame, right? There's just joy. There's like so much pride in what has been created, like the time and effort and love, and it's like, how precious. So we just want to go back to that place.
I want to go back to that place. You're exactly right. My nephews will sometimes say, look at this. And they'll jump on the spot. You'll be cooking and you'll stop what you're doing and you'll go over, and they're like 7 years old. So jumping on the spot really is just, it's not that big a deal anymore. And that's what they're doing, because it's like slightly different, or they've got shoes with lights on them, or, no shame, complete pride in like, I need space from you. I want your attention. I have something to show and provide and give. And then, you know what? Even as the audience, you're like so drawn in by their joy. You're so drawn in by like, you're like, yeah, I see you, that has to be accessible to us as adults.
Yeah, like this unapologetic taking space. There's something in me that wants to be shared, that wants to be witnessed. It's here. Take it or leave it.
Exactly.
This is horrible. This is horrifying.
No,